Hello and welcome to the Security Tapes. Today we have two guests with us. We've got David and we have got Bob, and they are about to tell you why they're on the cast with us today. And we're going to start with Bob. Over to you, sir.
Hi there, I'm Bob Sampson. I'm the CIO and CISO of the RVM Group. I've been here about 15 years now. I've been working in security for about 25 years, on and off, in getting more and more focused on it over the years, and it's become more and more relevant topic, which I find fascinating. I'm very much of the mindset that security should be a business enabler. I try to sort of raise companies' awareness of why they should be tackling this and not sort of like, hiding their head in the sand. I'm a big fan of security and want to promote it.
Cheers, Bob. And David.
Well, thanks for inviting me to speak. I'm VP for a global payments company. Been in the finance industry for around 30 years. I think I've done every job in that particular time, but the one that I'm passionate about is, information and cybersecurity, and every opportunity I get to share wisdom and techniques that might help people on their journey. Really, really fortunate to get that opportunity, and I look forward today to speaking to you and Bob. I think it's going to be a great time.
Awesome. So, gents, we've got a bit of a mixture of potential topics here today, because when we talked to you originally, Bob, we were talking particularly about the culture side of things, sort of looking after your teams, make sure you're not burning them out, and make sure we're not killing people essentially in the pursuit of security. So I know you've got anecdotes and strong feelings around that. Perhaps that is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that security is being such a hot topic at the moment. One of the problems with security, like any hot topic in such a fast-moving industry, the people come in and get sucked in, and technology and business has been racing ahead for many years, and security has been dragged along trying to catch up and make up this shortfall, this gap. And a lot of people in security are struggling because there is this gap, and there's this sort of almost expectation in a lot of businesses you can just close it instantly. And we all know that's not the case. We all know that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes planning, it takes budgets, it takes various sort of like consultations, etc. And you've got a lot of people in senior positions in security who struggle because there's this weight of expectation on them that they can just come in, wave a magic wand, and everything's fixed. And we all know this isn't the case. And of course, as you fix one thing, another area of the business has gone out and adopted a new technology, a new platform that brings its own inherent risks, etc., into your sphere that you're controlling. So you fix one thing and there's another thing to do. And I summed this up in my own business where someone said, we have bought a firewall. Surely that's fixed everything. And it's like, yeah, that's it. We'll just draw the line there. We've got a firewall. All security concerns are out the window now. We've got the firewall. We can just forget about it. Maybe we'll get another one in 10 years' time, but that's it. And it's not. We all understand that security is like everything. It's an ongoing concern. It's something you have to keep revising, keep looking at. It's, doing the checks, doing the audits, etc. And that's just on a stationary system. And no business is stationary. It evolves, it develops. It's a mobile, organic thing. And therefore, to stay relevant, you have to move and develop with it. And this onus of weight of responsibility on professionals to try and be this sort of like wizard who comes in and do it has a big impact on a lot of people. And you see a lot of people in the security profession are suffering from burnout. They're suffering from very poor work-life balance. And this is something I think where you do have to be very mindful that your expectations of the professionals you engage is realistic. And again, this is where hopefully we can educate people, educate business owners, etc., to realize that what you're hiring is an onerous job. It's difficult. It is time consuming. And there's a lot of stress there, because also there's a lot of time you're dealing with people who may not be forthcoming with issues, and they may not know what issues they have. And so there's a lot to take on. And we see this a lot with just the output of professionals who suffer because of it.
I think it's such an important message. I think the word that jumps out there was wizards. It's like the idea is the whole cybersecurity thing is treated as magic, and I mean, I know the amount of times that when I've been in the UK consulting space as a pen tester, I get billed out as some kind of security mage, and it's not the case. It is a very technical job, as all these things are, but there are people behind it, and there is only so much you can do. I had an excellent boss a couple of jobs back, and his line was, "You can only do what you can do," which I still wheel out to people today. It's so important, and I think it is important if you're in the decision making space that it is not. You aren't sort of putting it on this pedestal of like, oh, it's magic or it's absolute. Understanding that security is not something you can solve or dial in 100%. You can reduce risk, you can manage it, but it's not something you can you can wave away lock stock.
100%.
Yeah, because I've been thinking a lot recently about how security compares with other sectors and their development, their maturity. Aeroplanes is a big one. And, you know, if I were to say to everybody, unfortunately, there's a big aeroplane crash every couple of months, I think we'd all probably agree with that. I think that's a fair comment. And if I were to say, tell me a good story about a crash that didn't happen, a success story, we'd probably talk about Miracle on Hudson, and we talk about what that Captain Sullenberger did, and he landed that plane on Hudson. But then, if I were to say to people, do you know how many successful takeoff and landings there are a year? I've got a little stat I wrote down. In 2023, there were 35 million flights. 35 million flights, right? Now, they don't put that on news, that we took off and landed these crazy steel tubes that are flying everywhere 35 million times. And I often think about what you guys do in security for people. And I think, how many takeoff and landings have you sort of overseen as an analogy? And it's like, you know, people can't wait, can they, for when something breaks, like M&S, and it's on TV. It's even on BBC. Even my dad rung and said, you want to ring in them M&S guys up there? They need to speak to you. Thanks, Dad. I think they've got it covered, to be honest. But yeah, but when something bad happens in our industry, it does get like attention. And it kind of annoys me that, what about successful takeoff and landings? David, what do you think on that?
You know, I think what Bob says really resonates, because in reality, when you employ security professionals in your organization, you're actually creating a digital department of defense in there. It's a discipline where people within that particular scenario are actively engaged in conflict at a digital level, which might not be visible to everyone else around them, with the mission of protecting the people of the organization and strengthening the security around that particular product. I think what's often overlooked is those individuals are under a constant level of stress every single day in an environment where they're in an adversary situation, and they having not only to manage their own levels of mental health and stress, but they're also having a leadership level, having to look after their team's levels of stress and well-being as well. And it's a really unusual thing, because your companies don't have tanks and aeroplanes and soldiers, but actually they do have digital professionals who are capable of defending from other governments and highly organized crime at a level which really should not exist within a company at all. So this discipline that's arrived in many businesses is quite a unique situation that is perhaps not replicated elsewhere in other departments. And that's why it's such a stressful place to be, but not necessarily visible from an outside in.
Absolutely. So I think it would be useful, as both you guys have run teams, you've got lots of resources at your fingertips. How do you make sure you're not burning you guys to a crisp?
Personally, I think we've all worked at some point for people who are bad bosses. And I think you can look around and you can see bad management, bad leadership in whether it's clients, whether it's, companies, I try and look at them and go, I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who cares about my team. I want to be the person who, it's not just about buying pizza, it's making sure that their work-life balance is right, making sure that they are as fundamentally as happy as you can make it, that they want to come into work. And the metric I use is how long they stay with you. The longer the people stay in the team, the more they probably want to be there, because these are people who can move on. They can reasonably easily get another job if they want to, probably even one maybe at a higher salary. But the longer people stay, it's a good metric as to how happy they are, that they want to be there, that they're finding the job engaging, and that it's not crippling their life outside of work, etc. And I can, one of my sort of proudest statistics, if you like, is the fact that the average time on my team is something like about 6-7 years.
Nice.
So, these are not people who are coming in doing 6-12 months and burning out. These are people who are here and they want to stay. And I'm not going to say I'm the best boss. I'm not going to say I'm in any way, some savant or anything. I'm not super clever. Just try to make sure that I think of them as people, and as much as possible look after them and make sure that they are happy.
Yeah.
And
Don't
I
break
think
the
on the back
toys.
of that, you get a lot of commitment out of them, and you get a lot of quality work. And they don't feel scared to come and say, they shouldn't feel scared, and I don't think they do feel scared to come and say, I feel pressure. I feel, I'm not. This is difficult. Can I have a couple of days off? Can I take a couple of personal days? It's been a heavy week or something. I need to decompress. And again, you can just see this in people who are hard charging, bullheaded. I'll go out this. They work really hard, and at the end of it, you've got to have that pressure valve, that release valve, to let people, who put in the effort, they put in the hours, etc., who respond when you need them to. Because we work in security, sometimes you get a call at 4 a.m, and the people who turn out at 4 a.m might be the people who need to go home, one day just early because they're just feeling a bit, it's all on top of them. It's like, go home. If you don't come to work, if you're feeling a bit ill, if you feel a bit ill, go home, relax, get over it. Don't feel that you're expected to push yourself like that, because they will push themselves, because that's the nature of those people. So let them, the ones who are good, make sure you look after them, because they're worth it.
I think
love it.
I think that's really, really great insight. And I think for security leaders, I think the investment in emotional intelligence and strengthening that part of your skill set is really important, because, the ability to understand, put yourself in people's shoes, resonate in terms of how people's behaviors are really good indicators for you to enable you to, essentially look after the well-being of the team around you, because every person who is successful is actually successful because they're surrounded by people who are successful with them. And especially in information security, your point around burnout, stress, late nights, tiredness, all these things accumulate to offsetting work-life balance. And I think as someone who is managing a team, I think you have both a personal and professional responsibility to ensure that you're creating both an environment where they can succeed, fail safely, get the skills and investment that they're looking for to build their careers, but also emotionally and as a team, are working together in a way where you've got great foundations of trust. You can have disagreements, but that builds on to, strengthening the overall approach that you're taking. And also, when you do that, you find that you've got teams that are willing to take on responsibility and accountability for the actions they do. And like you, Bob, I have a great retention in my teams in terms of longevity. And a large part of that, I think, is because actually they know that they're getting that investment and that they're important, and that not only skill wise, but emotionally, that's something that they can feel as they work on a day to day. I think security leaders is a massive, I think for any leader actually, but in security, I think it's a critical part of building effective teams. And your security team has to be really, really effective at 2 a.m. when you're tired. You might have been out, someone might have had a beer that night. They've been to a wedding, and all of a sudden the alarm goes off, and everyone's coming together with their eyes not really open, trying to get a job done. And if you really want to see teamwork in a really stressful situation, I would say join a security incident in the early hours of the morning, and you just see how they solve an impossible problem with no information, with the entire probably organizational at stake. I suppose if you're in security, these are the sort of things that you live for. But great reflection of teamwork, and the outcome is usually a result of management operating with the right behaviors.
I think David, they used a term I'd like to pick up on quickly: emotional intelligence. That's really, I think, key to what we're talking about here, is the fact that it's very easy to be techie, and we're all techie people. And I wear my geek badge with pride. But again, this is not something I'm saying I'm good at, but I recognize the requirement to have a level of emotional intelligence and empathy for people, especially when a lot of the teams you deal with may themselves not be that emotionally intelligent. These may be younger people. They may not be as experienced in the workplace. They may not understand quite what a work-life balance looks like, and maybe you have to help guide them in that. And make sure you keep an eye on it in case they're not keeping an eye on it for themselves. Because people are terrible at looking out for themselves. It's easy to see it in someone else, yet they may be missing it in themselves. So one of the things I try and look at is make sure that I'm trying to keep an eye on them and understand what's going on in their life and how that might be affecting them in work, and how work may be affecting them outside of work, and try and make sure you can talk to them about it, and sort of like make sure that these things are not taboo subjects to discuss.
Oh, that all rings true. And we talked about it in another podcast. I think the Mill called it servant leadership. This idea of looking out for your people rather than it being a sort of a top-down, do what I say type arrangement. And you've got that duty of care for your team to get them to operate, to do what it is that needs to be done, and making sure they are looked after and they are effective. You're not breaking your toys. And I think part of it also comes this idea of understanding people's motivations. And I would be interested to hear what your experience is of it, because I've existed in a very sort of a pen tester heavy bubble, and we all do this for a living. No one does it for free. We're not charities, but there is a passion aspect to it, and it kind of annoys me when people say, "Oh, you need to be passionate," and it's like, "Oh, I'm plenty passionate. Go away." I think a lot of people aren't in security necessarily for the money. It is a nice byproduct, but there is more to it, and I think this is what we mean when we talk about passion. And I think a lot of teams, a lot of individuals, what they really, really want is to be invested in. They want to feel like their work is worthwhile. They want to feel recognized for what they do. No one wants to feel like they're just coming into work, punching in and punching out, and that it's no great shakes. And I think what you were talking about, David, this idea of investing in people, building them, being one of these key things I think people need to want to stay at a company. You might get more elsewhere, but do you get invested into the same level? Are you built up to be more than you are? Do you get to work on interesting, worthwhile stuff? Do you feel like you're moving the needle?
I mean, if you look at yourself individually, and if you're listening to this podcast, and you look at your successes through your career, a lot of, without doubt, a lot of that is your personal commitment and energy and time and love for the job. But actually a really important part of it, especially when you're stepping up or your ambitions are getting realized, a big part of that is actually the people you work with. And a lot of that is down to the managers you've had and the peers that have taken time to invest in you to help you grow to the next level. I'll give you an example. As a leader in InfoSec from a technical background, naturally, I'm not going to be able to go and speak to a board with any form of legible understanding unless they're all prepared to study for a PhD in cybersecurity, right? So communication in the engineering industry as a whole is not something that is often quite natural for people who are coming from an engineering background up until their management career. So this is an example area of where leaders who are in that place, building the next generation of, people, can share that wisdom on how to communicate, how to phrase things in a way that resonates, how to create language that people can understand. And it's these skills that you pass on to the people around you that ultimately will enable them to be successful, just like the people before them did that to you in order to enable you to be successful. Without the peers around me that have taken their time to enable me, I would not have been successful. And I'd probably be still where I was, several years ago, enjoying my job, but I've not met my max potential. So leaders and any manager in an organization, one of their big priorities is develop that individual to their maximum potential. And if you can do that, then really you've got not only an excellent person to work with, but also they're going to look back and think, well, I'll do that in the next person I meet as well. And I'm really passionate about that because without people doing that for me, I wouldn't have had the same level of opportunity I've had up until now. It's easy to forget when you're under pressure and things go wrong.
Yeah, really good points there, David. Really good points. And I've worked in small companies for most of my career, really. And I think where I've enjoyed it and where I've seen other people enjoy it has been that. I remember one time sat with my chairman and a young person came in who was in the accounts team and they said, "I've got some really bad news." And we're like, "Oh dear, sit down, tell us what's wrong." And she says, "I've been approached to go and join one of the big four." And we both looked at each other, me and chairman, and we said, "What's bad news?" And she went, "Well, I feel really bad because I'm going to have to leave." And we went, "No, that's like fantastic because our job's done here." At the end of the day, if we were in a position where we were good enough and developed enough as an organisation to keep you, great. But if we've taken you to a point where somebody else has spotted that you're better there, then that's what it's all about. And I think developing your team in such a way is admirable. And I think the other thing that you talked about really wonderfully there is the storytelling element. And I think a lot of the time I speak to people who don't have the benefit that I've got of speaking to so many leaders in security. And they go, what do these CISOs do then when they go into these board meetings? Is it all about how many times they've evaded being attacked? And is it all about phishing metrics and these kind of things? I'm like, no, it's about the good people I've worked with. It's about using some pretty off-wall theories sometimes to model things that might happen. And then to explain to board of directors, this is the chances of this thing happening. And this is what would happen if this thing did. And it'd probably cost us this much money. But if you let me do this, which will take this long and cost this much money, that's probably better. And you could see director going, so basically, if I spend this much, I'll save that much and everything will be good. That's kind of it, yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that story. And I think it is kind of about that. And it's, I've said it on other ones. I do repeat myself, but I think it's that 10th man thing. I don't know if you've seen World War Z where zombies attack and 9 people, it's their job to think of the obvious things going to happen. And the 10th guys, zombies were attackers. And I love that aspect that if we're doing what we're doing, we should be thinking that way, because we all were there a few years back when pandemic came. And we know for a fact that some companies were like, wow, this has happened. What do we do? I don't know. And luckily, government have got some kind of plan. So let's look at their website and they'll tell us. And other people went, oh my God, this has happened. What do we do? And it's like, no problem. Go and get that BCP plan that we've got. Yeah, go and get it. It's in cupboard back there somewhere. You dust it down. What's an AS400? It's like, oh, it's a bit old. Yeah, it's a bit old as plan. And then other people were like, oh, I've got my BCM, my business continuity management, because I can survive this thing. Right, what do we do? Well, it's not about pandemics, but there is this bit about everybody working from home. So flip that switch and everyone went off to do it. And I think it is that that world of storytelling, planning, and modelling. I mean, do you guys have any particular advice you'd give in terms of when you're thinking of managing risk, really? How you do it? Is there any favourite ways you've got to take in facts and turn them into stories?
100%. My absolute go-to is I can turn anything into put it in terms of analogy about cars. Because I have a chairman, he's 83 or so. He doesn't understand what I do. He doesn't understand any of the words that come out of my mouth. But if you can sit down and you can tell someone a story about a car, how it relates, if you're talking in terms of a car, they'll understand it. Because everyone understands, concepts of a car. It'd be as simple as the fact that, if you're talking about the suitability of something for a job, you can say, you can start a freight haulage company with a Mini, but it's maybe not as good as with a van, or maybe not as good as a lorry, but the Mini will still work, but you're going to, not make the profit. It's going to take more time and it's not as efficient, but it will kind of do the job. But if you're shifting furniture and stuff, you'd be better off with a van. If you're shifting pallets, you want a lorry. Little things like that turn potentially complex or very idiosyncratic language and jargon, and you couch it in terms that is accessible to everyone, becomes something that everyone can understand immediately. And you can sit around any table and you can explain the Mini versus lorry kind of analogy, and everyone goes, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. So if you can say, the Mini in this case is solution 1, the lorry is solution 2, this is why we want solution 2, because the Mini will work, but is nowhere near really fit for purpose, but it kind of sort of looks like it does the job, whereas the lorry's where you want to be. So, in terms of stories, I will always go to my vehicle car analogies.
Yeah, I do love that, and I've got to say I've used the car one myself because I were lucky enough to get a stint as a CISO for a while, and it were £400 million company growing to £1 billion company through investment. So money want an option, objectives should I say, want a barrier to anything, and it were a case of, right, greenfield site, build a security function, and you've got the IT group head of IT to help you do it, and he knows his stuff, and he did, and that were handy. So yeah, let's have some fun. So one of the first things on the list, we need to get a SOC. What's my budget? Whatever you want. Oh, brilliant. No, let's go and have a look then. So we're looking at BT, looking at Barracuda, who bought this beautiful Irish company that were excellent as a SOC, we're now branded Barracuda. And we looked at all sorts of things, and I literally could buy what I wanted. Now, a few things sprung to mind. One was, I didn't like salespeople, even though I used to be one. I felt a bit bad about that, but it's just a fact. Nearly everybody who spoke to, I could see the dollar signs in their eyes because they asked, how much is your company worth? Like, quite a bit, and we're growing. Tell us more about your story. Well, we're getting loads of investment and going to make it £1 billion, but we're onboarding new companies every week, so there's a lot of risk there. Oh, risk, money, oh yeah. And you can see dollar signs in their eyes as you're explaining. What's your budget? I'm not telling you. We must have a rough idea. Well, we can afford what we need to. Oh, great, yeah. And I just didn't like the experience at all. In fact, to the point where I went to speak to my own network, and it were my friends who were IT people who become CISOs and heads of that said to me, why don't you try doing this? The car analogy, though, Bob, I will get to it. I do get there eventually. Was that my group IT director said, which are we going to go for then? We're going to go for that BT one, or are we going to go for the Barracuda one? And I says, no, we're going to go for this little boutique company in Leeds. And he's like, well, that's the cheapest one. I said, yeah. He said, but why are we going for them? I said, well, there's an whole raft of reasons. I'll put that in the document for you. But to put it in very simple terms, when you passed your test, what were your first car? Were it a Porsche or a Ford Fiesta? He said, well, it would have Polo. Because you get my point. I said, why don't we get a Polo, learn how to drive, then we'll go and get the Porsche. Because there's no point going from nothing to like all singing, all dancing, crazy world. I said, there's more in my business case, but that's the gist of it. So yeah, I like your car analogy.
It's a good one. It's a good one. One of my favorites is what I call cyber fitness. So often, you're in finance, there's lots of regulatory frameworks you need to meet. There's, lots of, threats and risks that you're trying to manage. And I think this whole world is a really complex place. So one of the things I've tended to do is to say, well, look, there's a level of cyber fitness an organization needs, and that's actually a personal choice. You can be a couch potato, or you can be an Olympic athlete in terms of what you want to do. But an Olympic athlete, it's expensive. You have to put a lot of energy in to be disciplined. You're really at the top of the game, where maybe, at the couch potato, you're not really taking fitness seriously at this point. The reason why I use that is because it draws you into a perspective where you can say, well, look, in sport, you look around you and you see how fast everyone else is running. So if you probably need to be at a certain level of fitness that your peers are in. And you also need to be in a certain level of fitness in terms of threats that you're operating within the environment. You might need to be a good digital swimmer, for example. And also, I would say that cyber hygiene then lends well into individuals, because it's not just about the company, actually. It's a fitness for everybody in the organization that they can really relate to. And then we can start to say, well, how do we measure fitness? What does that look like? How do how fast are you going? What speed do you want to go at? And that helps you give a construct and a framework to say, well, firstly, this is not a one-off activity, because fitness is actually something you do all the time, and you continue to manage your level of fitness. So in a cyber fitness program, you can then build a framework, if you will, that you can look at in terms of, well, what my peers are doing, why do I need to be that way, how am I going to get to that level of fitness, when do I know I'm there? And we recognize that this might be an ongoing activity with an element of maintenance, rather than just being a one-off, capability change and then thinking, well, I've done that. We don't need to invest in that anymore. And if you build your training material, your awareness material, you line all your messaging and your podcasting, your organization around that methodology, it creates you a nice anchor point to have a conversation with people in any part of the business to say, well, what do you think your cyber fitness looks like at home or in your family or in your department? And that's I use the car a lot, and travel and journey. We've all been trained in these acronyms, but these analogies. But I like the cyber fitness one. It works really well.
Yeah, that's cool.
I love it. I'm definitely gonna steal that one. And I feel like we all speak in analogies to a certain extent, just to get over the arcane nature of what it is we do. And I mean the fitness one works really well for me, because I think a lot in terms of what I do in terms of resilience and recovery, and the idea of like, if your cyber fitness is sleeping right, eating right, doing your exercise, you're going to last a lot longer and be in better shape than someone who's just just about making it through.
There's another piece as well. Is one of the great examples is insurance documents. In the old days, they were like, you can't even understand what they say because it's just full of all this jargon and nonsense. And you think, well, I need insurance, I'll just pay for it. Now you get this really nice sort of graphic, got 4 key points. And that's because it's all written in plain English. And I think that's something else you need to do for essentially your customers, which it might be different department managers, whoever that might be, is just communicating in plain English, which is actually a proper discipline. It's not, it is an actual language that you can go and look up and Google. And then this creates words that people can understand and explains complex problems. So adjusting your language to plain English, and also keeping the messaging, the big messages short, and not putting too much information into that message, I think also helps people anchor and resonate in the terms of what you're saying. And you're always going to get more than one opportunity to have a conversation about InfoSec. Hopefully on a good day and not a bad day. We don't want to learn from experience. Well, learn from disaster. We want to be proactive and learn from maybe mistakes that aren't material, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
It's interesting because we sort of almost come back to because we were talking about emotional intelligence earlier, and the idea of people having these soft skills and understanding what your team needs and looking after teams that perhaps don't necessarily have that emotional intelligence yet, and then breaking down simple ideas for other departments who perhaps aren't technical, breaking down ideas for the board who have other bigger priorities, who are very sort of strategic, very big picture. And I think as an industry, we focus massively on the technical side. All the training is bent on the technical. All the certs bent on the technical. Everything is technical. It's almost fetishized as like, you must be this high to do cyber, you must be this technical, and people don't think about what it takes to communicate correctly with your colleagues, whether up or down. People don't think what it takes to get complex ideas across cleanly in a report, in an email, to make yourself understood. And it's done. It's been a feature, sort of, as I've been going through my career as a pen tester and a red teamer, that people have taken more time to say, this is how you report properly, make it clear. But I think there's still a long way to go, and we still focus on the technical aspects way too much, when actually soft skills are what separate good professionals from truly great ones, and really good team players.
I agree 100%. I think the market, I mean, no business has suffered because they had better communications. And the act of communicating, essentially, I mean, to my mind, I think for me, it is probably the thing I do best. I'm, I call myself technical. I'm geeky. I can talk the techie stuff. But I think what I actually do best is I can go into a room and communicate at a level that is appropriate to the people in that room, that they understand, whether that is up, down, or to colleagues in different departments, side to side. You have to have the right language in the right context, in the right way it's delivered, for it to be an efficient communication of ideas and concepts that they can take away. And how you speak to the chairman is going to be very different to how you speak to, the head of a department crosswise in the business to you. Might be very different to how you talk to a customer. But if you can talk to people in the right way and you can open up their understanding, you can, it gives you business opportunities to develop if they're a client, because you can bring them into your worldview and make them buy into how you see things. And if you're trying to sell a product, or whether it's a service or something, that is the art of it there, is trying to, make them see it from your point of view. And again, if you're trying to get a budget for a new technology, a new platform, or even if you're in the middle of an attack, if you're going through a breach or some sort of incident and you're in that response phase, and I'm sure everyone understands this because you're being screamed at from all angles. When's it going to be up and working? When are we going to be live again? Oh, we've got systems now. How much money are we losing? All that. At that point, being able to communicate timescales, but also be able to communicate that you need peace to be able to focus and, give me an hour, I'll give you an update in an hour, setting reasonable goals, expectations around timeframes, etc. Having that ability to say that and not just go slightly balmy and, pour the cup of coffee over your head instead of drinking it because you're so stressed. Again, communication is where it's at.
That's interesting. So I've got a couple of ideas with this, and I've been getting more into this this idea as I've been building a business, starting to build and run teams, is understanding how technical people work and how you work as a manager. And one of the things you really don't want to be doing is when someone technical is trying to work on a problem, and I know you guys are going to recognize this, is the last thing you need when you're trying to solve a crisis or you're deep in a technical problem. You don't want someone coming asking you for sit reps. You need to be focused in something breaking the flow. It takes you half an hour to get back in if you're, deep in a terminal or sitting in an IDE trying to pull apart some code and figure out what the hell's just happened. You don't need you need to have those big blocks of uninterrupted time where you're not going to be messed with, so you can actually have answers. Whereas more management types have much faster cycles, lots of meetings, lots of one-to-ones with people. You get on the call, you get an action point at the end. Everyone's happy. It's not quite like that for technical people. There is a process, there is a journey, and understanding that is really important to getting the best out of people.
I'd agree on that. I think one of the, if you will, the management pitfalls is not put too much expectation on people. There's often an expectation that person's going to run the 100 meters in 10 seconds, because I can.
Yeah.
But they may never ever be able to do that. They're even with all their energy and development, they may well, maybe they're a 14-second runner, for example. And when you translate that into cybersecurity and operationally people around you, one thing you do have to recognize is the ability that people have and what their maximum current capability looks like today. When you look at dysfunctional teams, as a manager or a leader looking into that team, firstly, you've got to stop and look at yourself and say, well, what am I doing? Am I interrupting them? Am I disrupting their ability to concentrate? Am I setting my targets too narrow in terms of not giving them enough time? Or really, am I just saying, get out of the way and rolling my sleeves up because now I just want it done to the way I want it done? And it's really easy to do that in a pressure situation when it's time restrictive, and it's really hard to hold back, I think, especially if you're technical as well. As a manager, we've experienced to just step in and go, mind out for the moment. I'm going to grab hold of this steering wheel and I'm going to do the driving for a minute. But in reality, you've just taken the learning opportunity away from that individual, and they're probably not feeling great about it because actually they've not had the opportunities to succeed. It probably highlights, I think, in terms of any leadership role, but I think in a security role, the management skill, communication skill, the leadership qualities you've got, and that blend and that really broad ability to communicate is a really critical aspect of that role being successful in an organization. And you can hear that reflected on this call with Bob yourselves. It's something that really, really sort of resonates in terms of you've got to put investment in that for yourself in order to get the best out of the people around you.
I'm just loving all the analogies coming out.
Yeah, we're going for it now, aren't we? Yeah.
Vin, you were going to jump in with something.
Yeah, it's an analogy, actually, mate. Now you mention it. And,
I love it.
And it's football. Actually, I haven't done a football analogy, and we've done about 10, 12, 14 casts now. But it is a football one. And one of the things that made me think of football was just what David was saying. And there's an old story about Kenny Dalglish when he became Liverpool manager. And he were outside at pitch, and I can't remember who his assistant was. It might have been Souness at the time, but his assistant stood next to him, and Dalglish said, "Go do this, do that, do other," and he's shouting at team like crazy. And assistant just put his arm around him and said, "Kenny, they're not you, pal." And it's that understanding that he was somewhat special, really, and that he would try to get the best out of a bunch of people who were different. And I think when you think of football teams and how complex it must be in the modern game, where you've got these young people that are top of the game, and they've got all sorts going on off that pitch. They've got all sorts of money. There's the social, all the stuff that's going on. And you've got to get the best out of that team, out of them individuals to perform a game, really, at the end of the day. And it fascinates me. And like, I'm really proud of my Irish heritage, but I've always been an England fan because I was born in England, and they're the ones who've made me cry most. And I always remember being younger, not knowing much about life and not knowing much about business, but getting into it and watching Terry Venables. And we were all about penalties. And I always remember about penalties, similar to security. Doesn't matter who's the best team in the world, whoever they are, you give them enough penalties, they're going to miss one because that's just life. There's no such thing as scoring 100 penalties out of 100 penalties, right? So Venables had a plan for this. And his plan was, based on our recent stuff we'd done as a football team, was, if it goes to penalties, we'll be all right. And someone said, well, have you been practicing like? And he went, no. He's like, are we going to be all right then? Because we'll be fine. We'll be okay. And it's like, well, don't you think you should practice penalties? I don't believe in that. And to me, that was like just such a massive eye-opener. I thought, I don't know about football at that level. I don't know about life yet. I'm still relatively young. I still actually believe England could win something. I'm that young. And he's saying, don't practice penalties. The guy's an idiot. Because surely if there's two universities and one we don't practice and the other we do, in one we practice, we got more chance, haven't we? And it comes back to this thing about what one of the other guys have said. There's loads of people said loads of different stuff. And one of the things one of the other CISOs has said to us is about exactly what Bob was saying about looking out for your team in times of crisis. And he had a guy, I think the guy's called he had chickens, this guy. CISO was saying that they had an incident dealing with it, and he literally went and put his arm around her and said, I think it's time for you to go and feed your chickens, mate. Because he had chickens. He went, do you reckon? He went, yeah, no thanks. Because he'd been at it for like God knows how many hours in the midst of that problem, and it's like, go feed the chickens. There's a time to look after your team and send them off and to do things. But the other thing he said is when he first went into the group board meeting, and the guy said to him, who's on the board, one at Ned's, when we're going to be secure then? Like he said, I'm here to make us as secure as we can be and to make it difficult for people. I'm here to get us back to normal when we do get compromised. He went, what do you mean when we do get? He said, yeah, when we get compromised. And for me, he said, it's drill. When people are expecting it, drill. When they are expecting it, we've got a drill coming. And then when they're not expecting it, drill them again. And for me, it's practicing penalties. So there's my rubbish analogy for you.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
So I often ask guests on the podcast if they've got sort of any advice for CISOs, but with you guys, given the topics we've been talking about, I think it'd be useful to go the other way. For people who are relatively new into the industry, or maybe they've not first had their first management role and they're still super technical and they're like, how do you get soft skills? What do you do? How do you do people? What advice would you give them?
Requires a level of self-awareness there that is, I think, probably comes with maturity, comes with age, comes with experience. That asking, maybe someone in their sort of like late 20s, early 30s, to have that level of introspection to say, am I right? Am I doing okay? When there's experienced older people who themselves are not good at it. I think maybe the answer is to not, be aware that you're not doing things on your own, and as much as possible, try to lean on your teammates. Because if you can't see it in yourself, if you have a team around you and you can see it in other people, hopefully they are looking out for things in you. Having a good team, I mean, a team is everything. The people you work with, who you trust, who you're sat beside every day, who you're dealing with, you have, let's be honest, most days are relatively easy days. They go through as normal things, but every now and again you have a bad day. So, you have the people around you on those easy days, integrate with the team. Hopefully it's a good team. But having a good team means that when you go into the bad days, the people around you, how they're going to act, how they're going to feel, and that they're looking out for you as you're looking out for them. This is no different from the military. This is why, you spend all the time doing the drills, doing the set pieces, doing the exercises, so that when you come to do it for real, you know that the guy next to you has done it 1,000 times, like you've done it, and the guy this side's done it 1,000 times. You know he's going there and he's going to do this. And as a team, you trust each other and rely on each other. And, having that sort of like a good team that you can rely on and who they can rely on you means that hopefully you have some degree of objective perspective on yourself. So how that translates to advice, I'm not really sure, if I'm really honest, but possibly, trying to embrace the team around you and realize, not be scared. I mean, communication is still going to be the key on this. Communication is everything. Tell people when it's hard, do you need to offload it? There's no shame in saying, my workload is too high. Can someone help me here? Can you come in? I need someone to help me with this. Can we share the problem? Can I give you this task, etc.? That there's no shame in this. And that as a team, I judge what my guys do as a team, because, if someone's working really, really late and someone goes home early, I think there's a mismatch there. We should be pulling together to try and make sure that we're all sort of like helping each other out and going home at the same time.
Perfect. Loving the nuance in our answer. David.
Yeah, so 3 key things that I would recommend people getting into management to do is, firstly, I would say, be brave and get yourself a mentor. It's really important to be able to sit and share in private things that are working or not and learn from those people around you. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing is remember that you're successful if everyone around you is successful. And one way to do that is to create a safe environment people can fail in. Your job is there to almost create a shield. Sometimes you have to take it on the chin for the team, but you can factor that into their development. So a safe fail environment is a really important culture to create within your team. And the third key point I would say is don't avoid conflict. You have to make tough choices. You have to take accountability and responsibility for the things that are happening. You're there to make decisions and you're there to enable change to happen. So don't worry too much about making mistakes. We're all human beings, and your manager should be creating the shield for you as your development. But I would say if you're adopting those three things, which is get a mentor, create a safe environment, remember your team is your success, and also be brave and don't avoid the conflicts when necessary. I suppose the fourth pillar to give you a level that foundation always is don't be a stranger. So broaden your network, speak to your peers, socialize, and make sure that you're building a peer relationship outside of your department as well, so that you're building that network. Because as a manager, it's actually those skills that will actually enable you to be successful because you've got all the right ingredients. So that would be my tips at this point. Those are 4 things I would start doing if you're not doing already.
Yeah, I think both of what both you've said, guys, really fantastic advice. I think from the military viewpoint, it's coming quite a bit into my life recently because a lot of people that we're coming to speak to are ex-military, and it's just is very common in our industry, and it's good. It's good. And as a younger person, a bit of a punk, bit of a rebel, if I went into army, no chance. I wonder what them idiots tell me. But then I've found as an older person, for some weird reason, I've got into my war films and like Caesar Jadoville and Zulu, the classic, and all the different war films that I watch. It's like fascinating to see why they do the training and what that training delivers. And, things like one of my favourites, 6 Days, when you look at that, as a kid growing up and there were only 3 channels, so you watch Best Thing, well, that siege at Embassy and SAS and how they performed. And, as a kid, you were just like in awe of these guys and how brilliant they were at doing the job, and it come from that training. I mean, the result of that siege is like, it's unmatched. It was just amazing what they achieved. And so that military training, that training for things, practice your penalties, please, because it makes sense,
I'm a huge fan of the notion that there's no original problem. Someone's had this before. So if I've thought of a problem, if I've thought of a scenario, if I've thought of something, someone else has done it before me. I am not an original thinker. Someone's had that problem. The answer is out there. Ask people, speak to people, Google it, whatever. But I'm not bright enough to know the answer to everything.
Yeah, I think it is. History tends to echo, does it not? The only big bit of advice I give to everyone, because not everyone's sure about this one, if somebody pitches up, knocks at your door when you go downstairs, there's a big wooden horse, be careful. Make sure you check the belly, just in case. There might be something inside.
It's a Trojan horse, right? Brilliant.
And on that note, gents, that's been an awesome podcast. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you.
So much insight there. So many good analogies, so many good anecdotes. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Vin, do you want to take us out?
You just have done, Adam. I can't beat that. That was perfect.
Perfect. Then on that note, gents, thank you very much. And we hope we will have you on the podcast again another time.
Definitely.
Thank you.